Today, in the first reading, it speaks of how God really has to be patient with us. Even with us as sinners, He reminds us. And that made me think of St. Augustine. Now, St. Augustine's life was one where he was not very serious and lived a life of a lot of sin, and then later on was transformed. And he was transformed thanks to two people, St. Monica, who happened to be his mother, and also St. Ambrose. St. Monica was very patient with her son, even seeing everything that he did, living his life of debauchery, as it were. She was patient and prayed and kept encouraging him. And St. Augustine just ignored everything his mother tried to do, and he moved away to study philosophy, which he loved. And while he was studying, he met who we now know as St. Ambrose. He was fascinated with him because St. Ambrose was such a scholar, philosopher. And they used to have these great conversations and debates. And that was the vehicle that St. Ambrose used to transform St. Augustine. Now, St. Ambrose knew that Augustine lived a life of sin, but he never criticized or chastised him. He would question him, and they would have these discussions, but he always treated Augustine with respect. As a friend, invited him over, and they would have great conversations. And that, after a while, is where St. Augustine came to realize the error of his ways and became a great Christian, and later a very holy person. People picked him to become their bishop. Now, let's imagine that St. Monica and St. Ambrose were not patient and loving with him and chastised and criticized him for everything that he had done. Would St. Augustine have been serious about becoming a Christian and lived that life? Probably not. He probably would have never become a Christian, a holy person, a bishop, or even a saint, for that matter. It was through their love and patience. Even though they may have disagreed with his lifestyle, they challenged him, they respected him. And oftentimes that has a huge impact. Look at today's gospel. It's the story of Zacchaeus. Now, many Jews hated him because he was a tax collector. They hated tax collectors. And they hated him for two reasons. First is we have to understand that at that time the Jews were not free. They were under Roman control. And the Romans would collect taxes from them through the tax collectors. And many of them were Jews who worked for Rome. So the Jews hated that those other Jews bowed down to Rome and were tax collectors and took money from them. And tax collectors at that time tended to be on the take. They would take some profits for themselves and give the rest to Rome. So Jesus ended up meeting Zacchaeus, the tax collector, and rather than scolding him and telling him how much of a sinner and how awful he was, he said, "I'd like to come to your home." Jesus loved him, whether he was a sinner or not, and had a great impact on Zacchaeus and transformed him. Zacchaeus even promised Jesus that he would pay back all the money that he pocketed from people. And he changed. Now, had Jesus not approached it that way and been critical of him and chastised him, Zacchaeus would have went off and never changed. So now it's just like with us today. When we see people doing things wrong or sinning, we don't need to criticize them or chastise them. That just makes it worse. The best thing we can do is be patient. And I know sometimes it's so difficult to be patient over and over again and to continue loving them. And it's not that we should turn a blind eye to what they're doing. We need to stand and speak out and challenge those people, but always with love and respect and with open dialogue. And then after a while, they will change. Thank you, and God bless you.